Hello and welcome to Child Life 101. I am Katie Taylor, a certified child life specialist and CEO and founder of Child Life on Call. This is a 10-week series designed to provide informative, accessible, and engaging content around child life to those of you who are more interested in learning about child life and how our services can support children and families during medical experiences. Over the next 10 weeks, we'll be exploring the world of child life, sharing best practices, personal experiences, and practical tips for individuals who want to learn more about our field. So whether you are a parent of a child who is receiving medical treatment, a child life specialist or healthcare professional, a student or aspiring child life specialist, an advocate in pediatric healthcare, or anyone who has just got a general interest in child life and healthcare, this podcast series is for you. Hello, my friends. I'm so happy you're here for week 1 of Child Life 101. I am here in my home studio office and really excited to be doing a little bit of a different series and episode. So if you haven't already, go back to last week's Child Life 101 series preview so you can understand what we're doing. But today we're jumping into all things like what is child life? How do you become a child life specialist? And I thought it would be really interesting just to kind of give my perspective on how I became a child life specialist, because I haven't done that before in the, 6, almost 7 years of doing this podcast. So I'll tell you a little bit about my journey, and then we'll go into how you become a child life specialist today and what the expectations are. So for those of you who don't know, here's kind of a Cliff Notes version, and everybody has their own version of the child life elevator speech that we call it. But we are a field that focuses on the emotional, social, and developmental needs of children and families during medical and healthcare experiences. And our skills are incredibly transferable. And so you'll see child life specialists working outside of healthcare settings now, and schools and hospice and jails and all these different places where we find that our skill set can really transfer to a variety of settings, which is really exciting for our field. I could not be more grateful to be in my job and am just so thrilled to be here with you today. So I told you I would give you my story, and I guess it's important for me to highlight some of the hard parts that happened, because it is actually really hard to become a child life specialist. And I know that it is way different than it was back when I started discovering and learning about the field in 2007 when I was a senior in college. So I went to Penn State University, go Nittany Lions, and was very active and involved in Thon, which is a student-run philanthropy. It's actually the largest student-run philanthropy in the world. And during that time, I got really involved with a lot of the families that we were supporting. So the families we were supporting were getting care at Penn State Hershey, and they were in the Children's Oncology Unit, and they were being supported by the Four Diamonds Fund. The Four Diamonds Fund makes it so that any family who walks into Penn State Hershey in oncology gets everything paid for, from their treatment to their meals to their gas. And all of these foundations are supported by the students at Penn State. So each year we stand on our feet for, when I was there, it was 48 full hours. And I don't even have words to experience it. There's a couple of times where I have felt like, oh my gosh, this universe is amazing and so big. And Thon is one of those places. Everyone there is there for someone else. No one has selfish feelings. So needless to say, got on a little tangent right there, but I just fell in love with Thon and the medical components and complexities of supporting kids. If you don't know this, my mom has been a child abuse advocate my entire life. And so I have watched her dramatically change the landscape of how we talk to our kids about child abuse. And so I knew I always wanted to work with kids. I didn't know what capacity that would be in, but I learned about child life through Thon and thought that is my thing. Unfortunately, I was in a major that had nothing to do with child life. I was a PR and marketing major. and I had 2 minors in both sociology and business administration, which is really peculiar to think about what I'm doing now and starting a business with Child Life on Call, using marketing and PR to do this podcast, and now getting to do my love of child life. But thankfully, that sociology minor had so many of the relevant courses that I needed to become a child life specialist. So those courses, I can't even remember what they were. And I had what was appropriate, I guess, to apply for an internship at the time. At the time, it was the Child Life Council. And what I didn't have were some of those like play-based courses. So I knew a lot about family systems, child psychology, socioeconomic impact of families, but I didn't have any of that play. So I went back to night school as I worked. I worked at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as a community outreach coordinator. I was traveling all over the country, educating law enforcement and teachers and parents about internet safety. And during that time, I went to night school so I could continue to just learn and have a more robust background. I was not ready to get into a field when I didn't know the ins and outs of a field that was so heavily based in play. So I did those, and then was lucky enough to apply and obtain a practicum. And then I got an internship and a fellowship after that, and continued on in the field. So that's kind of my short, but it was still kind of long version of how I got into child life. So I know things are different these days. You have to take a course by a child life specialist. I did not have to do that when I became certified and was taking my exam over 13 years ago. But that is my story. And one of the parts I loved about why I felt so accepted into the field, having gone through kind of a different path, not having the normal child development, human development, family studies background, was that the hospitals that I did my training in were so excited that I brought something more to the table, something different to the table. I shouldn't say something more, something different to the table. And so as I was creating interventions, I was pulling a lot on my experience in working with law enforcement, my experience in speaking to rooms full of crowded school resource officers, speaking at the Attorney General's office and talking about internet safety. I was pulling on my experience at Thon. I was pulling my experience from so many different places. And that's why I think it's so great that you don't have to have this one track to get into child life. And yes, the road will be hard. And yes, I was turned down from internships. And yes, I was turned down from practicums. But you have to continue to navigate the field the best you can. I realized completely that I come from a place of privilege in that I had a university. I was exposed to child life early on. I had the means to go out and find a well-paying job and take night classes at night. So it's not lost on me that I had a very easy entrance and access to this field. And I'm excited about some of the barriers that we are just kind of starting to look at as a field and really change into. So let's get back into what do child life specialists do. So we are a specialized field within healthcare that focuses solely on the needs of children and families. And we get to integrate with the most genius, amazing medical professionals. I am still in awe of some of the women and men that I have got to meet along my path, and just continue to inspire me. And I get to work alongside them, which they feel the same way about child life, which is really, really great. So we are experts in child development, backgrounds in child psychology and family dynamics, and we use elements of play, art, music, and other techniques to help children understand their medical experiences and express their feelings. We provide education and preparation for medical procedures, as well as for support during those procedures. We also are there for the entire lifespan, so supporting NICU families with a 22-weeker all the way to end of life. So as children pass and their siblings cope with that passing and their parents cope, as children face their own mortality, as adults grow and have children of their own, and those are families that we continue to support. So you'll find us everywhere and anywhere, and there needs to be more of us. So one of the things I do want to talk about is why play is such a essential component of child life services, and what I think really helps us stand out from the care team is that play is the natural way that children learn, and play provides a positive and normalizing experience for kids, helping them to maintain a sense of control over their environment. A very quick example I can give you is that, and this is kind of a funny story that I like to share, but I had a patient. I was a med-surg child life specialist at the time. So I was working on just a regular medical surgical unit. And I had a patient that had to miss a basketball tournament because he had appendicitis. And man, this kid handled pain. It reminded me a lot of myself. When I was going through childbirth, like I am not a screamer. I just breathe deeply and like close and scrunch my face. And that's exactly what I saw him do when he was in the emergency room. One of the privileges I had was working in a small hospital. I could actually meet a family in the emergency room, follow them to surgery, support them in med-surg until they were discharged. It's a really magical experience when a child life specialist gets to see a family go the whole way through. So I was supporting this patient, and basketball was so important to him. I think he was about 8 years old. And it's admittedly really upsetting when you're a part of a team, and in the big picture, his parents could see this one basketball tournament was not a big deal. He is going to get life-saving surgery for a very critical infection. And he didn't see it that way, though. So he was just so upset about missing his basketball. So one of the things we get to do is be really creative. And at the beginning, when he was in so much pain, all he could do was play like a little basketball app on the iPad. So you like literally stroke your finger and try to get the basketball in the hoop. As we moved forward to later that day after surgery, when I got to come in and check on him, we started flicking like little wads of paper we made a hoop. And of course, he was so good right off the bat. And then the next day overnight, he woke up and he did not want to get out of bed. It's, you've been laying there stiff. You have a lot of gas to pass. And so one of the things we could do was get him up into the playroom. And when I told him there was a basketball hoop in there was no turning back. He was up and out. And there's just a couple of things here I want to talk about, and how child life uses play, but in turn really helps the entire experience. So family feels like their child is being seen and taken care of as a child. The child's developmental needs are met. The child's physical needs are met to get up out of bed after surgery. The child gets out of bed faster than they normally would if they didn't have the incentive of getting to a playroom and having somebody help them get there. And so they get out quicker. The hospital saves money because the patient is out of bed faster. Getting discharged quicker means an open bed for someone else to come into. We're using less medication or maybe less incentives because he is moving around more. And so that's why it's really hard, but not impossible, to improve the ROI, the return on investment, when you work with a child life specialist. So much of it can be subjective, but thankfully we have really smart people in the child life field who are helping us figure that out. But to that family, to that boy, I know that his experience was made better because of the child life skills that I have learned, and was just so happy to do that and be there. We also play a really critical role in family-centered care. And unless you're in a hospital environment, family-centered care may not mean a lot to you. So I'm going to have you go to ipfcc.org and learn more about family-centered care and child life services. But it's a model of healthcare that recognizes the importance of the family that's being seen. It's not just the patient, it's the patient's parents, the grandparents, the sibling who's at home. So we look at the whole family and are really trained and well established to be able to provide that type of support. So it's a really critical component when hospitals say that they engage in family-centered care, that they, match that with the child life services that they provide. So if you are interested in becoming a child life specialist, you have to now hold a bachelor's or master's degree in child life, child development, or a related field, a minimum of 10 college level courses. You have to complete a 600-hour clinical internship under the direct supervision of a certified child life specialist and pass that internship. You then have to pass the child life professional certification exam and adhere to the code of ethics and professional standards as set by the Association for Child Life Professionals. So that is kind of our background and how we become equipped to do that. Where do child life specialists work? We're going to have a whole podcast series or podcast portion of this series where we talk about child life in community settings, which is, of course, near and dear to my heart as I'm working here from my home and talking to you. And we're also going to be talking more about why hospitals should invest in child life services. And so I'm just going to touch on that a little bit. Child life services have been shown to provide numerous benefits for patients, families, and the healthcare providers. And research has demonstrated that child life interventions can significantly reduce children's anxiety and stress levels before and during medical procedures. Child life programs have also been found to improve patients' pain management, overall satisfaction with medical care. In addition, child life specialists have been shown to reduce healthcare costs by decreasing the need for sedation during procedures and reducing the length of hospital stays. Also, am a big testament to that. I have myself and along with so many other child life specialists saved kids from having to get anesthesia and sedation just by taking the time to prepare them and coming up with a coping plan. Investing in child life can help improve staff satisfaction and retention rates because when nurses have an easier time getting the IV, they are less stressed. When they have someone there to help support the emotional well-being of the family so that they can focus on their job of doing what they need to get done in the safest way possible, that makes a huge difference. And, I don't want to always just paint this rose-colored glasses because as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this is that I had immense privilege coming into the field. And one of the biggest challenges and barriers we face is a lack of diversity among our practitioners. So currently the field is predominantly made up of white female professionals, just like myself. And that creates barriers in a number of ways for children and families who come from diverse backgrounds. It's incredibly important that children and families see people that look like them taking care of them. And there are some phenomenal people in our field who are offering workshops for free and more evidence and research and ways to circumvent so much of the challenges and the barriers in this field as far as race and racism and perspectives go. So many of us, way too late to the game are recognizing the importance of diversity and are working as hard as we can to increase representation through different initiatives and programming. I know within my hospital, we created a committee that really looked at, what are the books that we're giving out? Do we have the accessories necessary to meet all different cultures who come into our hospital? Are we, making sure that there's different baby dolls that are available that we're using? We're not bringing in a white baby doll every time we need to teach a medical lesson. So those are really small parts, but it's important to make changes and look at those headstrong as we are in this profession. In addition to the lack of diversity in this field, child life specialists face other challenges. And one significant resource is the lack of funds available, a lack of funds in our salaries, a lack of funds in having the tools and resources that we need, a lack of funds to support the burnout that we feel. And also kind of just talking about burnout this is a field that is based on really managing our own emotions as we look at and support families managing their emotions. And so secondary trauma is a real thing that child life specialists go through. I myself for the longest time didn't want to call it secondary trauma because it wasn't mine. I was only merely the observer. I was the one on the outside supporting these families, but that didn't mean it didn't impact me in a way that resonated throughout my relationships, my marriage, my parenting, and so much. And, thankfully I saw that with the help of a therapist, but that was a therapist that I paid for out of my pocket. And I learned a lot from her and was, privileged to really be met with compassion and the tools and resources, including, drugs. I'm on medication to help me with mind. And of course, if, I'm not telling you to go out and get on medication, you'd have to talk to your healthcare provider about that. But those are real challenges that face us. But there's always kind of this beauty that comes out of the hard parts. And so through my therapy and through EMDR, I've turned one of the most challenging times in my career. And when I think about it, I'm thinking about it right now. I used to be filled with dread and worry and complete fear that was debilitating and would cause heart palpitations. And now when I look back on one of those parts of my career, which I'm not ready to talk about yet, I'm met with this vision that I was able to be there and support that family. So I know that's probably hard to understand because I'm not giving you a lot of the context clues, which is on purpose. But, I think we can work through some of the challenges. And by bringing awareness to the field, bringing awareness about what we do and how we impact, and not just how we, impact the ROI, because that's what hospitals want to hear, but how we impact families. And I get to hear that all the time on the podcast and through Instagram and other social media channels. So child life is a growing field. It's an important field. It's an essential field. And I hope that this episode today has given you more insight into what we do, how we get there. And I'm so encouraged by all of you who listen and share, and parents that you find value from what we do. So next week we will be back. We will be talking Child Life 101. We will be talking all about how to help kids when they are in pain. So I hope you stay tuned. You enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't, please go like or review or recommend this podcast so it makes it easier for other families to find us. I'm so looking forward to this 10-week series. We're in week 1, so we have 9 more to go, and I will be back here next week. You can find us at childlifeoncall.com/podcast or anywhere you listen to your podcast.